Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is Dwayne Allen with another installment of Dwayne Allen Guitar Concepts, and we're going to put today's lesson in the intermediate category. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how to develop your blues vocabulary. So we did a lesson before where I basically introduced you how to get into soloing over blues. Like that one lesson was just using the scale against backup tracks and seeing what they sound like. And then I showed you some very, very simple blues licks and showed you how to apply them. So if you're working on that and you're getting comfortable with that, the next thing that I really like to do is just show you a solo. I'm actually not going to teach you the solo. I'm going to show you what you can do with it though. So what I always recommend for any guitar player who wants to learn the blues is, you learn the first few blues licks, basic licks, just to get you started. And from then on, I would just start learning solos from your favorite blues guitar players, okay? And I'll show you what you can do with those solos. But basically, the first solo that I usually teach most of my students is Hey Joe by Hendrix, okay? Now, technically, that's not a blues song, and some people like, oh, Hendrix is not blues. Believe me, Hendrix is blues, my friends. He may not have been around doing this in the 50s with an old Gibson guitar or whatever, but Hendrix was one of the greatest blues guitar players of all time by far. I picked the Hey Joe solo because it's short and easy. Okay, I like teaching Hey Joe and using that. But what I'm going to do is I want to show you what to do with the Hey Joe solo. So I'm not going to teach you the Hey Joe solo because that's not what this is about. And I'm sure there's 100 videos on how to do Hey Joe and all that. So what I do is when I'm teaching one of my students is I'll teach them the Hey Joe solo. I'll tab it out for them. I'll show it to them and they'll learn how to play it. So the first goal is that you should learn the solo, get it down as good as you can, practice it, try to practice it with a record if you can. So I'll just play it for you just as a reminder. So that's my interpretation of the solo. I think I'm pretty close. But anyway, so that's the solo. And so the first goal, what you want to do is you take a solo like this and you just learn it. You get it down really, really good. Practice it. Try to play it to the recording. The most important thing you could possibly do is try to match the phrasing that he does. How hard does he hit certain notes? How soft? The dynamics. Does he pull this note off? Does he pick this note? All that kind of stuff. You want to try to match it to the recording as close as you possibly can, okay? So that's something that is pretty obvious. You just learn, you practice it, okay? The second thing you want to do is start trying to use the licks and kind of internalize them into your own vocabulary of soloing, okay? So what does that mean? So some players will learn 100 solos and they memorize every lick and they have, lick number 35. Here's lick number 87 and they just play it note for note in their own solos. That's, that's okay to do, I guess, for a certain amount of time. But what I like to teach my students how to do is to not necessarily copy the licks, but use the concept of the lick. So what does that mean? So let's say the first lick goes like this. First of all, this entire solo takes place in the E blues scale in the 12th fret. So this one. So I'm assuming you know that scale already. If not, you should definitely learn it. But anyway, the whole entire solo fits within that scale, okay? So anywhere, any key that scale can be played, you can play it in E or B or A or G. This solo can be played in those keys as well, which means all the licks can. And I think of this solo, as a lot of solos, as, it's a complete thought, it's a complete statement, but it's also made up of a bunch of really great licks, okay? So like, for instance, the first lick goes like this. Right? That's a great lick. So what I tell my students to do is take the lick and use it in your own soloing, but try to do variations on it. So I like to talk about the concept of the lick. What does that mean? So you're using one, two, three, four, 5 notes. So the concept of the lick is you're bending the B string up and down, and you're pulling off. So you're bending it up and pulling it off like this. And then you're doing the same thing with the 3rd string. And then you're playing the root and then back to that note. So you're 5 notes, and then you're bending up and releasing, bending up and releasing. Okay. So what you do is I have some backup tracks in the key of E, and it's actually not the song Hey Joe, but it doesn't matter. I'm using the licks and I'm taking the concept. So what I'm going to do is I took that one lick and I'm going to jam now using only the notes of that lick and the concept of that lick, and I'm just going to do variations on that one lick. So here we go. I'm jamming in the key of E blues. So that's pretty much the same as the lick. See what I'm doing? I'm taking the lick and I'm just kind of doing variations on it. I'm changing the note order, I'm changing the rhythm, but I'm taking those 5 notes only and I'm just doing little variations on the lick. So that way, instead of being a lick parrot, which is what I call people who just play licks note for note from their favorite, guitar players, this way I'm taking the lick, I'm doing variations on it, and I'm making it my own, because the whole point of all this is getting your own style and your own sound out of it. So that was the first lick. The second lick is almost the same. So this lick has a little bit of a different concept. I'm bending the B string up and down, pulling off, pinky to first finger, but I'm doing this 3rd string bend, keeping it up and having my pinky on the 2nd string on the 15th fret. So that's a little different than the first one. So now I'm going to jam using only that lick and trying to see the variations that I can come up with. I did? Same notes, same concept, but I did my own variations on it. So I'm going. Same notes, same type of deal. So, 3rd lick, let's see what we got. So the 3rd lick is little double stop and a kind of a short thing. So the concept of this lick is double stop, root, double stop. Double stop means 2 notes at the same time, and then a quick slide. Right? So it's a quick thing. So that's the concept of that lick. So let me fool around with that one for a little bit. I'm doing my own rhythms, changing it up, changing the rhythm, all that kind of stuff. Now let's do this. Let's take the first 3 licks and I'm just going to stay with those general ideas and do variations on them and see what I can come up with on my own. I'm doing? 3 licks, changing them up, variations. I didn't do any of the lower notes. I didn't even use the first string. I only limited myself to those notes and all of those licks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all it was. 5 notes. Right? That shows you every lick that you learn from someone is a little seed, and if you can water it and let it grow, it can turn into a million other licks. So instead of learning 100 solos with 500 licks or whatever, you can take one solo and squeeze every drop of water out of it that you could possibly take out, and you build up your vocabulary. So now if I was to do a solo, that already sounds like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on there. That's 3 licks. That's all it is. So the next lick is that short little thing, right? The slide up, the concept of the lick is the slide up to there, and then fat vibrato on the first finger on the 3rd string. So what's the concept of this one? The slide, fat vibrato on the 3rd string. How many notes were there? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's all I'm going to play is those 4 notes. Only those 4 notes. Now I'm going to mix that lick with the other ones again. All that stuff I got just from a couple licks out of a solo. Okay, that's the concept that I want you to learn from this lesson. It's not about here's the solo, here's how you do it. You can learn that on your own. But I took each lick and I just did variations. And once you can do that in E, you can do it in any key, right? Let's say if you're in the key of C, right? Right, you're doing a blues. Right? Same thing. I just moved it to the key of C. I just built up a whole bunch of vocabulary just from half of the Jimi Hendrix solo. So that's the concept, and you should do this with all of the licks from the solo. That's a great lick. Mess with that one. Variations, all that kind of stuff. So that's what this is all about, is building up your vocabulary, and you're working on your vibrato. You want to take each lick, and what's the concept? You bend this note, you shake this note, you do a pull off here. That's the concept. There's only 5 notes. Let's limit ourselves only to these 5 notes, only bending that note, only doing vibrato on that note, and you just work with it. You work with it. You work with it. This is what separates a great guitar player from an average guitar player, because an average guitar player just goes up and down the scale. It's boring, right? A good guitar player will take one little nugget of music, and they work with it, and they work with it, and they work with it. That's in all music, and jazz and classical music. Da 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 da, right? Motivic phrases where you take a short little nugget and you work with it, and you work with it, and you work with it, and you work with it. That's what great jazz players do, great blues players, rock players, classical composers, whatever. They all do it. That's what I'm trying to show you how to do here, is you take one little nugget and you work with it, and you work with it. And that way, you're thinking musically. You're not just running your fingers around the guitar, because that's boring. Nobody wants to listen to that, okay? So hopefully this helped you as far as approaching solos. You can do this with any solo. I'm going to probably do more solos in the future and show you how to do this, but you know, you can take B.B. King. Right? Well, what are those licks? What's the concept of the lick? Which note is he doing vibrato? Which, you know, and you work with that. Okay? Obviously, listening to a lot of music is very, very important. Try to get, like I said earlier on, when you learn this solo, make sure you can try to get the phrasing as close to Hendrix as possible. And then you take that phrasing into your own soloing. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. Hope you got something out of it. If you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button, and see you next time. Have a great weekend.